All right, good afternoon, everyone. So I did launch a poll if you're just now logging in for the topic for our last class. I like to let the students choose what the topic is because I think that is pretty fun after you learn all of the Python basics, where do you want to go from there? So go ahead and fill out that poll. I'll use it to decide what we learn on the last day. If you are asynchronous or just watching this recording, you may also email me. If you're enrolled in the class, you have my email. So you are free to email me your choice there if you would like, or if there's a choice that's not on here that you want to mention, you can email that to me as well. And I know our last class is just a week from today. It's gone by so fast. I hope you've been enjoying it. I really enjoyed having you all as my students. It's been a blast. You participate so well, and I just enjoy teaching you guys. So I'll keep that poll open for a couple of minutes just in case people are late so they can still fill it out. I'm really glad to see in the chat that people are saying they had a good time. Thank you. Okay, so that poll will just be up for people that come in a bit later. We're going to be using Replit. Okay, so this is just what I was talking about this week. We're talking about file handling. Next week, we're going to have, on Tuesday, we're going to have a quick session on importing libraries. And then, the other topics could be from this list of topics or other ones that you like. So fill out the Zoom poll. It says next class because that was from last class. So now it's this class. So I have that poll going right now. All right. So last time we talked about file handling, which is a fancy way that computer scientists say opening and manipulating files. So if you imagine a .txt file or .text file, this is just a plain text file. So not like Microsoft Word or anything, but like if you open Notepad on your computer and you can basically just, type words in there. There's no fonts or anything usually. It's just text. And so that's a text file, and that is what you can open in Python, or at least what we're going to learn. You can have other libraries to open other types of files, but we're just dealing with text files today. So what we do if we want to manipulate a text file using Python is we set it to a variable name, and this is known in the Python world as a file object. That's because you're basically importing that file into your Python and creating, its own object. So it's going to be a variable. If that confuses you, just know that you assign a variable to be the path to your file. So we're going to have this variable name. Usually it's FO, that stands for file object. It doesn't have to be it. Obviously, you can name it pretty much whatever you want within the bounds of variable names in Python. And then you're going to use the open function. The open function is what Python has to open these files. So you say open, and you provide it with two arguments. The first argument is a string. It is the path to your file. So if your file is located in a different folder, you need to indicate that. But let's assume this is in the same folder as our Python program, and it's just called myfile.txt. You just put that file path as a string in there, a comma to separate your arguments, and then the permission also as a string. Now remember, a permission is just what you're allowing the program to do with the file. Is it allowed to read the file, write the file? Is it allowed to delete the file or create a new file? So there were a couple different permissions that we looked at the other last class. The main ones are R for read, W for write, A for append, which just means add to the end of the file, and X for creating a new file. Most of the time, we'll just be using R plus, which means you can read and write, or W just for writing. Yes, David. Oh, I need to, okay. Sorry, a new workflow for me. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I don't think this was mentioned last time, but one of the reasons you might want what might seem to you an oddly restricted open thing there is that you may not have permission to open it with anything more permissive.
Yes, like if a file is set where only certain people can edit it, you mean?
For example, or you could even have I don't know if you actually can or not, but there might be systems that have append-only files. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't had those, but I think so, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, so sometimes you need that permission just because you're only allowed to read it and you can't edit it. just based on like your system. Yeah, exactly. Sterling, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. What is the difference between them is different?
Yeah, so I'll talk about kind of how they're different. Great. So we have the R string. So I'll show you these in a bit, but the R is for read, W is for write. So reading a file means you can't edit it. W means you can write to a file. And as we found through Miranda's trial and error last time, you can not, with W, you can't read, but you can write. If you would like to read and write, you need the R and then a plus sign inside quotes. I'll show you that in a bit. David, do you have another question? Okay, maybe not. Always got to check. And then we'll have A, which is appending. So I'll show you all of these, but this is just the basics of opening a file in Python. So you're going to have your variable name, usually FO, this open function. You're providing it the path to your file, and then also what permissions you're giving it. So are you allowed to read it, edit it, delete it, whatever. So here is just our basic file handling workflow, just based on what we learned last time. So it's always going to be the same workflow. You create the file object with open, you read it or you write to it, you edit the file, you do whatever you need to, and then you close the file. So the fo.close is how you're going to close that file. That makes sure that you're not leaving it open and then logging off your computer, and for whatever reason your file's still open. Usually computers have protections against that, but still it's good practice to always close your file when you're done with it, so that it's not just sitting there open in your program. So this is our basic workflow. Create the file object with the open function, do whatever you need to with the file, and then close it. So now I'm going to go into some examples. So for this, I prepared a text file. It is called names.txt. I actually asked ChatGPT to provide me a list of 50 names and then put that into a TXT file. So if you would like to use this yourself, I can attach the file in Zoom. Oops, taking a screenshot. That's not what I wanted. So I'm going to attach a file and send it to you in the Zoom chat. There you go. So this is the file I'm going to be using. If you open your Zoom chat, you can see it. If you're watching this asynchronously, you can ask ChatGPT to create a list of names for you and then copy and paste that into a text file. If you want to upload a file here, you can click new file. Oh, no, maybe it's new folder. There's an upload button. There we go. Upload file. It'll let you choose which file you want to upload. So in my case, I went ahead and pre-prepared this file. It's called names.txt. So this is a list of names. We could imagine that maybe this is a list of names of students. Maybe because I am a teacher, I am teaching a class, and that's the list of names for the students in my class. This is imaginary because I didn't want to put anyone's actual names of my students on the internet. So this is fictional, but we can imagine we have a list of 50 names. So now let's see what we can do. So first off, I'm going to start all of my programs now with this def main, define main. That is back to when we learned about functions. It is good practice to wrap your code in this main function, and then you can define some other functions if you want, but I just want you to get practice defining functions. So we define main, and then this is us calling main in the same indentation line. Inside of this def main, we're going to indent everything. So that is just back to functions. If you are confused on that, let me know and we can go back over functions again. But first off, we want to create our file object with the open function. So I'm going to say fo equals open. Then we got our parentheses here. There's no space between the word open and the parentheses. I see some people putting spaces there sometimes in the chat. And I don't know if it's Zoom like auto-correcting you or if you are putting a space there, but make sure that this is the N and the parentheses are right next to each other. So FO equals open, and then I'm going to put in quotes the path to the file, which in this case, we can kind of see the file structure here. So in our replit environment in this folder, we have two other folders, main.py and then names.txt. So I can just put names.txt because it's in the same folder as us. It can find it from this folder. So names.txt, I put a comma here, and let's just say we just want to read it. I don't want to change this file at all. I just want to give us read permission so we can see what is in there. So fo equals open names.txt and then R for read. All right, so now if we want to just go through and read read the entire file, we can save that so we can have, entire file equals, and the way that we read an entire file is just fo.read. This will give us everything in the file, and then we can print that. So print entire file. And then at the end here, I'm going to say fo.close. So all I'm doing here, I open the file, read the entire file with fo.read. I want to print that, and then I'm going to close the file. So you see our workflow here. We have open, we have read, do whatever we want, print the contents, and then we close it. So now if I run this, there we go. And it goes and it prints out the entire file for us. So that's great. So I did say you don't always want to use this fo.read. That's if your file is really large. So if you have a text file that's like gigabytes large, you may not want to read all of it in at once. So another thing that you can do is read line or read lines. Read line will get one line at a time. Read lines will get all of the lines and then put it in a list for you that you can access later. So I'll demonstrate just read line, and then so I'm going to call this, one line equals fo.readline. If we want the next line, I'm going to say next line equals fo.readline. So readline is a little special where it's going to remember the position that it stopped at the last time. So it's going to read one line and then remember that the next time you call readline, it's going to go to the next line. So if I do this, one line equals fo.readline, and then the next line equals fo.readline, that'll be the first line and the second line. So I can go here, print one line, and then print next line. So just sanity check. That just means, checking that this program is going to do what I want it to do. If I look at the entire file that it printed here, the first thing that this should print should be Ethan, and then the next name it prints should be Olivia. So let's go ahead and run that and see if it in fact does what I want. And there we go. So we've printed 2 lines from our file. What we can do now is I'm going to erase this. What we can do now is we could say all lines equals fo.read lines. This will put all of our lines into a list. So, and then if I print all lines, I'll get all of the names into a list divided by line. Let's see what happens here. So this is actually really useful when you have a text file that has, one piece of data per line. In this case, our piece of data is names. So we have one name per line here. We could actually do some pretty cool stuff with this. So you can see here, we have, each name into a list. So this is, data we could use. We could do all of the things we learned about with lists. We could put all of the names in alphabetical order. We could find, duplicate names. We could do a lot with that. So let's explore that a little. So we've got all of these lines, fo.read lines. Now I'm closing my file. Now I'm going to take you back to list and string land, just a little bit of a review. So if I want to let's see, I could put all of these in alphabetical order. So we have a list now. So all lines, let's do, all lines dot sort, and that should put it in alphabetical order. And then we can print our lines. So there we go. So what I did was I used this sort method because read lines gives us every line in a list. Because each line for us, our data is structured this way where each line is one name. If I want to put all of those names into alphabetical order, I can get the list that we got from read lines, I can use the sort method that we learned from our lists week. And then when I print this, our list is sorted in alphabetical order. So if you look over here, this is the original one where we print it in its list form. And now the next one over here is in alphabetical order. So it starts with Abigail, Aiden, Alexander, and then it ends with William and Zoe. So just some interesting things. I just wanted to give you an idea of why you would maybe want to open files in the first place. I am a data scientist, which means that I regularly read files into Python, make graphs, do things with it, use data, do machine learning on that data. So I am all the time opening files and taking files in. And so this is just one example of why you may want to use this file handling. So are there any questions about what I did here with files, with anything? Okay, so I did send the names.txt to you in the chat. If you would like to download it yourself, upload it to Replit and kind of play around with that, you know, using an example file of some sort. Oh, yes, David. And yep. Okay, go ahead.
Are there any sort of best practices to avoid forgetting to close a file after opening
Yes.
it?
It is like you read my mind for what we're going to talk about next. Amazing. David got right to the point here. So yes, there are best practices because it's really common to open your file and then forget to close it. Happens all the time. So what you can do is use what we call with as. So this will open your file and then close it when it's done. So it's a chunk of code. And the purpose of this chunk of code is to open the file, and then when that chunk is over, it closes the file. So the syntax of this is with open as fo. So this is saying open myfile.txt and assign it to the variable file object or fo. And then within this indented block, you can do all of your file operations. And then when you unindent, it closes the file. So I'll show how to do that. So this way you don't have to have this close thing here and remember to close it. So let's do this example. So now I'm going to say with open, what is it called? Names.txt. And we're gonna just write, just with write permission, give it a colon. This is just do this exactly is how you do it. So it's the with, the open function, and then as fo, name it whatever you want. So this is taking the place of how we did it earlier because it will close the file automatically for us. Now we can do, you know, all lines equals fo, fo dot read lines. And then out here, we can say print all lines, and this will automatically close when it's done with whatever is inside this block. So if I run this, it does that for us immediately. And it doesn't necessarily know to close the file, it's just how this works. So the with, I don't have the documentation open, but the with as combination is a common Python syntax thing. Forgot the word. Common Python keywords that are used for specific functions. Really, I only see it with file handling. I maybe have seen it with other functions in the past, but it will, with this open function, it will open the file and then close it. And as for like how they programmed it to do that, I don't quite remember. But if you look up with as, it will give you more information. Usually W3 Schools has good stuff. Okie doke. So that is with as. And this is honestly, I think this is easier than writing out, FO equals open, do all of this stuff, FO.close. This does it all in one line for you. So we can do, whatever we want. We can say, just to show you how we get, multiple lines, we could say, one line equals FO.readLine. Second line equals FO.readLine. And then we can, print these. Second line, like that. Yes, Felix. Oops. Oh, hold on. I need to unmute you, but now I lost you. Okay, you should be able to unmute Felix. Felix, did you have a question? If you still do have a question, raise your hand again, and then I can unmute you, or okay, perfect. You should be able to unmute now.
Okay, so this works like when first, the base from what I heard is, from what I understand of this, you gotta make a second, in order for this code to work, you gotta make a separate file and write that a list.
Yeah, so you need this other file. So this is so we're working with files that already exist. Yes. So I sent the file that I'm using in the chat so that you can upload. So if you want to do what I'm doing, you can go here, select upload file, and upload the file that I sent in the chat. So this is for, reading in data that you have downloaded to your computer or uploaded to your Replit environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we wanted to create a file, I can show how we can do that as well.
Yeah, it would I think it would help, because I tried doing that on Tuesday and it didn't seem to really work.
Yeah, so let's try this. So now I'm going to try to create a file that doesn't exist. So let's just say I'm going to call it examplefile.txt. So I'm saying open examplefile.txt, and then with this X permission, X gives you permission to create a file. So if you're wanting to create a new file, you use X as your permissions. This lets you to read and write and create a new file. And this will give you an error if that file already exists. That's because we can't have two files named examplefile.txt because then they would overwrite each other. So if we want to create our own file here, I can say with open, examplefile.txt with X as our permission as FO. So let's just see what happens if I say, FO.read. And then, I'm going to say all lines equals FO.read and then print all lines. Let's just see what happens here. Not readable. That's because it doesn't exist. There's nothing there. Or it could be because I messed up on my permissions again, but let's create our file just to show you that it did. Okay, let me show you that again. Delete the file. Yeah, so if you use something like X, we can go to here. If you go to W3 Schools, it explains all of it, creates this file, return an error if the file exists. So X will create our file, and then what we need to do, because this file will be empty, we can write to it. So we could say fo.write is how we're going to write to it, and I can say, hello, this is my new file. So this file does not exist. You can see it's not in my environment over here. We're creating a new file. So I can say fo.write, hello, this is my new file. And if you noticed over here, we ran this over here, a new thing, it said examplefile.txt. This got created. If I click on this in Replit, now I have a file that says, hello, this is my new file. So this is now, a file that's saved to your computer. So you created it. We can write more things to this. So if I run it again, it will throw an error because that file was already created. So let me show you. If I run this again, oops, error. That's because we opened it with a permission X and it says file exists. That's because if we open the file again and then start writing with the exact same file name, it's going to overwrite whatever we had there previously. So instead, let's open it once more with R+, where we're able to read and write. And now this will let us write it. And I didn't change the text, so you can't see that it overwrote it, but let's go back here. I'm going to change this and say, I overwrote the file. So now if I run, I open that file that we created earlier with R+. I just ran it. It goes really fast, so it's hard to see, but I just ran it. And now, I overwrote the file. And you can see this like file, IL. That is because we're overwriting starting at, character 1. So that, there can be some leftover stuff. That's why you usually don't want to open a file that already exists and then start writing on it. So let's try creating a new file again. So go ahead and type in the chat. What am I going to type? What am I going to put here? If I want to create a new file called myfile.txt, go ahead and put in the chat, what am I going to type on this line here? So we're going to use, the with open as. So what am I going to type in here? So I'm going to start it for you. So we have with open as yes, great. Got some answers in here. Amazing. If you haven't already, go ahead and put in the chat what I should put on this line here. So I already started it for you. So we definitely need to fill in this open one if we want to create a new file. Awesome, awesome. Thank you for your answers. Wait a couple more minutes to make sure everyone is able to do this. I'm also gonna lean down and get my computer charger. Awesome, awesome. Thank you for your answers. Okay, great, great. So yes, if we want to create our new file, I saw some people were naming it coolfile.txt. I love that. And then we're going to create it using X. Now, what do I want to do if I want to write? This is my super cool file. So, write, this is my super cool file to the file here. So what am I going to put on this next line to write into the file? Yep, we're going to be using fo.write, fo.write, and then you just put the string that you want to put in there. So, this is my super cool file. And then the next time you call fo.write, it's going to start a new line. So each write will end with a new line character typically. Actually, I'll have to test this. It may not end with a new line character. I always forget. Let's see what happens. So this is how we could write multiple things. So I'm going to write something else. fo.write Here's another line. Okay, so this file does not exist. I'm going to run this to create our super cool file. You can see it showed up here. Let's click on it. Oh, and it didn't create a new line. So you do need to enter the new line characters. So it just put everything on one line. You can see it's just labeled 1, even though it kind of looks like it did, but if you spread it out, it's all one line. Okay, so if we want those to be on the next lines, we need to put new line characters. So I'm going to do \n to say start a new line, \n. And now it's going to give me an error if I try to open it again. So I could either, erase this, delete this file, or I can change the permission to R+, which stands for reading and writing. And I can run this again. It is going to overwrite what we had. So I ran it. Let's see what it did. And here we go. So we had this in my super cool file. It added a new line character, which just is like pressing enter when you're in the editor. So it's adding a new line. Amazing. I was really excited when I learned file handling in Python because it kind of felt like I could actually do things that were useful. So you can, read in a grocery list and then, go through the items and do something with them. You can read in numbers and, perform math on them. And this is just an intro to opening files. Obviously not all of your files are going to be text files. So that's something that we could learn on the last day if you filled out that poll, is, intro to data science. So more stuff like this where we're opening, CSV files or Excel files and stuff like that. Okay. So just another example to, hammer it in. We have FO equals open. This is an example if we had another folder that was documents, and then this was inside that folder. So documents/example.txt. We want to open it for writing. Read the line, print the line. This needs to be R+. Write the line that's going to overwrite the document and then close. So kind of a thing that we've been doing. So if you want, you can copy and paste this code. Well, copying it straight from the slides sometimes poses errors in Replit just because of the way that it gets copied over. It sometimes adds like extra weird spaces. But you can try this on your own if you want. And of course, we have the with as, which automatically closes that file for you. And yes, so R+ allows you to read and write to a file. So read and edit. So if it was just R, it's just read. R+ is read and edit. Just W by itself is just editing. And you can't read it, which doesn't make sense to me. And so I misspoke last time where I said that you could, but you can't. Okay, the with as. And one important thing that I do want to mention is note this colon here. So this is, just like any other code chunk that we're creating in Python where we indent afterward, you need that colon. So, with open, as FO colon, and then you have your indented block here. So next, I just have some general tips for files that I see people, related to the errors that I see people have. So make sure that you are specifying the relative path to the file. Your starting directory, you're starting in the location where you've saved your Python file. So in Replit, that's, this directory here called files. If you want to check, remember from when we way back at the beginning of the summer, you can say print working directory, pwd. Enter will show you what directory we're in. So we have home/runner/file handling. If we want to see the other files in that directory, we can do ls list. And it gives us all of these files, a lot of the ones that we created. Some don't be worried about these. These are just extra ones that Replit creates so that it's able to run your code, and then main.py. So all of the paths are going to be relative to your main.py file. So if we made another folder and then put a text inside that folder, we would need to add that to the path. So if it's in a documents folder, we need to say documents/ myfile.txt. And I will show an example of that in a little bit. Another tip is that if you know that the file exists, but Python says it doesn't exist, that's a sign that your file path is wrong. So if you're like, I know this file exists, but it's not finding it, I can see the file right here, that means your file path is wrong. Make sure that you have the correct path. Yes, David.
You said relative to your main.py, but shouldn't it be relative to your current working directory?
Yeah,
Or
so I
is-
said usually, the starting directory is usually where you've saved your Python
Okay.
file. So most of the time it's going to be where you saved your Python file, but your working directory can change around, especially if you change it. But yes, it will be your working directory. For most of us, that is going to be where your Python file is saved. Always remember that opening a file with a permission W is going to erase any previous content that was in that file. You're overwriting it. And that it is best to work with .txt files with this method. There are other methods, as I mentioned, but we're just doing .txt files. Okay, so let me show you an example of using the relative path. So let's just say I'm going to go over here to Replit, and I am going to, just to review our command line commands, I'm going to make a directory. Does anyone remember how I make a new folder? If I was over here, how do I make a new folder in the command line? Yes. Make directory. Amazing. Thank you. Great job. So we're going to have, it's mkdir make directory. And I'm going to say my underscore folder. All right. Now, if I do ls, if I do list, we can see, where is it? My folder. My folder is right there. So if I want to go into my folder, what do I do? What command? All right, now what command do I do if I want to move to that folder? So that's if you want to move a file into that folder. What do I do if I want to change my directory from this folder that I'm in and go into my folder? So kind of like on Windows, if you're going to click, yep, exactly. Yep, CD. So CD, my folder, we're on a roll. CD, my folder. And now if I do ls, we can see it's empty. But let's say we want to, make a new file here. So let's say I move. Now I'm just going to do this in here. Let's say I want to move names.txt to the folder. So I'm going to go back. We have names.txt. If I want to move names.txt to my folder, I'm going to say, Pammy had it before. I'm going to say mv move names.txt. Hopefully this is ringing bells for some of you. My folder. And now it will move that for us. So if we go back to my folder, ls, names.txt is there. And you can see over here in our graphical display by Replit, names.txt is no longer listed in this. Instead, we have my folder. And if we double click on that, we can see names.txt right here. So all of the point of that was, one, to review some command line commands as a surprise, because command line commands come up a lot. We haven't used them a lot, but they do come up a lot in programming. And second, to show you how to do a relative path. So now we have names.txt, but it's in this folder here. So how that will change our workflow up here is if we want to read that, we say with open. Now we're going to say my underscore folder slash names.txt. And we want the permission R as FO. So this difference here, oops, folder, is that we have to add that relative path. So this is relative to where, in this case, it's where main.py is. So we have main.py. To get from main.py to names.txt, you have to first go into my folder and then open names.txt. So we're just telling it directions, kind of like if you're telling someone how to get to a grocery store, you say start at this place and then go this way and then turn left and then you're there. So it's kind of like that, but with files. now we can say, you know, FO, you know, lines equals FO dot read lines. And then outside of here, we can print those lines. And there we go. So an example, what will happen if we don't have this file path here, if we just have the name of the file, it's going to look in the directory that is currently in. It doesn't know it needs to go into another folder. So if I run this again, we get an error and it says file not found, no such file or directory names.txt. And you say, oh, but there is, it's just in another folder. Well, your computer doesn't know that. Replic's computer doesn't know that. Python doesn't know that. So you need to tell it my folder. You need to give it that location. Okay. As always, open to questions. Okay, so we'll do a couple of examples. And then for the end of class today, we have this task to create a file. So first of all, we did the reading in a list earlier. And if you remember, we read in my folder names.txt, we read in those lines, and then we print lines. Let me go back to where it's working. And we have this, it gives us a list. If you want, you notice it has all of these characters, these new line characters. Does anyone remember what string method we use to get rid of what are called trailing spaces or these new line characters at the end, extra spaces and strings? Does anyone happen to remember the method? And you are free to Google this. Does anyone remember the method to take off spaces from strings? Sterling. Sterling, do you know the answer?
Sure, I know. So what is the answer?
I'm asking you what the answer is.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I
Can
thought you were raising your hand for it. Okay, we'll see if someone knows the answer. Strip. Yes. Amazing. Trim was a good guess. Yes, strip. So if we want, so let's just say I want to get, you know, the first line. Let's just test it on this first line here, which should be, or the first name, which should be Ethan, right? So let's just print lines, the first line, lines 0. And now lines 0 dot strip. Oh, and because we printed it, so it takes away this, which when you print it, it takes away the new line character anyway. But if you want to do dot strip, it will take this new line character out of here. So if we want to do that for all of them, I'm trying to think how I could show you that it did in fact. So let's say lines 0. All right, I'm trying to prove to you that it worked. Okay, I'm going to create a new list. New list equals lines. Okay, what I'm doing here, this is just to show you how this works. Oh my goodness. Sorry, my brain. I'm creating an empty list and now I'm going to append that list with lines 0 dot strip just to show you. So what is Miranda doing? Why is she doing all of this? I'm doing this to show you when you print this as a list, it's going to show you the new line characters. When you just print, it gets rid of the new line characters because you can't see them. So if I do this, then you can see, print. This is what happens when I try to come up with an example on the fly. Okay, so notice here we have Ethan \n, but now when we say dot strip, we have just Ethan. So that's what I'm talking about. We want to strip this new line here. So great job remembering that. So if we want to do that for each name there, I'm going to create a new list called, names, no space equals an empty list. And now if I want to iterate through a list, what do I do if I want to iterate through a list? I want to go through each name in the list. What do I do? What's the magic formula? Iterate through a list. What is in your head? That should tell you immediately what to do. If I want to go through each name in a list, yes, for loop. I'm going to use a for loop. So I'm going to say for I in lines. This is going to take us through each item in lines. I'm going to append here. I'll say, new name equals I dot strip. So this is going to it's going to go through each item in the list and strip it. And now I'm going to append. We are combining all of the things we've learned today. Append that new name to this empty list. And so what this is doing, it's going through each name in lines. It is stripping the extra \n here, the new line character, and then we're adding it to our list, our names with no spaces list. And now, finally, we can print names, no space, and hopefully that worked. And there we go. Now we have all of the names without the extra spaces. So I think I took up plenty of time on that example. Okay. So I do see map. I don't recommend using map. So for this class, we've only learned about for loops and while loops. Those are the main loops you will ever use in mostly your whole life doing Python. So those are the only two loops you should be concerned about. Okie doke. So let's go back to here. So we did a couple examples. We didn't look at searching a file, but that's okay. I want to give you plenty of time to work on this task here. So write a function that creates a file. Should take one argument, the file name. After creating the file, the function should write 3 lines of text to the file. The text content here doesn't matter. I just want to see that you are able to create a file and then write 3 lines of text to that file. Don't forget to close the file, and then don't forget to call that function inside main. So what I want you to do, you have your def main. Before main, you're going to make a function. So def, create file. Going to take in some sort of argument. You're going to put your code here. Don't forget to put an argument inside of here. You're going to do that. And then inside of your main function, you're going to call create file and whatever argument you're putting inside here. So does this make sense? Okay, I'm leaving the rest of class for you to work on this. So if you're still confused, stick around, work through it. Always remember, you can ask questions in the chat, in Discord, email me, ask ChatGPT, all of these things. But for the rest of class, we're going to work on this task. If you finish that task, you're good to go. And I will see you on Tuesday for the last week of class. Also, if you haven't already, let me check the poll. Most people responded to the poll. There's a poll going on right now where you can choose what we learned about our last day of class. So if you haven't filled that poll out, it should be available on polls or something. I don't know how you can see it on Zoom, but there's a poll. Answer the poll. All right, that's all I've got for you today. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording, and then you're welcome to stay around to work and ask questions.